بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين محمد الأمين وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين ومن تبعهم بإحسان ودعا بدعوتهم واستنى بسنتهم واقتدى بهديهم إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد. Alhamdulillah, we have reached Surah Al-Kafiroon, Surah 109, and there are many great virtues of the surah. First point, before we delve into the ayah by ayah translation, some of the virtues of the surah. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has said, "Man qara al-Kafiroon فكأنما قرأ ربع القرآن." The one who recites Surah Al-Kafiroon is as if he has recited 1/4 of the Quran. And there are various interpretations of this, but the summary of which is that 1/4 of the teachings of the Quran, which is the nafi of shirk, refutation of shirk, and the sifat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, isbat of tawheed, are present in the surah. Likewise, is narrated number 2 from Aisha Siddiqa radiyallahu ta'ala anha al-mu'mineen, that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam used to habitually recite the surah in the sunnah of his Fajr Salah. And likewise in Ibn Kathir, Tafsir Ibn Kathir, there's a large number of narrations from various Sahaba radiyallahu anhu ajma'in, that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he used to very habitually recite Surah Al-Kafiroon in the 2 rak'ah of Fajr, as well as in the 2 sunnah of Maghrib. And likewise, we know that in tawaf, whether it is the tawaf of Hajj, whether it is a tawaf of Umrah, or any nafal tawaf that a person performs in his normal sewn clothes without being in a state of ihram, after completing the tawaf, the 2 rak'ah that are performed, the first rak'ah is sunnah to recite Surah Al-Kafiroon. Second rak'ah is sunnah to recite Surah Al-Ikhlas. Speaking of ihram, when we don the ihram and we enter into the state of ihram, again, the first rak'ah, Surah Al-Kafiroon, second rak'ah, Surah Al-Ikhlas. And as we will see, the relationship between these 2 surahs is that Surah Al-Kafiroon is a surah of nafi of shirk, which is refutation of shirk. And Surah Al-Ikhlas is ithbat of tawheed, proving the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And just like in our kalima, first there is the nafi, negation, la ilaha, then there is ithbat, affirmation, illallah. So the first rak'ah is la ilaha, and the second rak'ah would be illallah. First rak'ah is la a'budu ma ta'budun, wa la antum a'biduna ma a'bud. Again, wa la ana a'bidun ma a'badtum, wa la antum a'biduna. This is the nafi of shirk, refutation of shirk in the first rak'ah. Second rak'ah is ithbat of tawheed, illallah. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد. Likewise, continuing with the virtues, there is a hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that he used to recite the surah before sleeping, along with the other 3 quls. This right here is du'as for the children. We see also here, after every salah, to recite, there is narrations here of Surah Ikhlas, Falaq and Nas, as well as the recitation of Surah Al-Kafiroon, the 4 quls as is commonly known, for protection. There's a narration where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu to recite Surah Al-Kafiroon, Surah Al-Ikhlas, and Surah Al-Falaq and Nas, the 4 quls as we commonly know. And whoever will continually recite this, InShaAllah, he will be protected from idol worship. He will gain immunity and protection from falling into shirk, which is a very great accomplishment for a person to be protected from shirk in all of its forms. Likewise, in the virtues of this surah, we have the narration of Jubair ibn Mut'im radiyallahu anhu. Jubair ibn Mut'im, he narrates that he asked Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam for what du'as he should make during his journey when he goes out for travels, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam told him that if you want to be the happiest and the most prosperous and the most well-to-do from amongst all of your comrades and all of your colleagues when you are in the travels, in your journeys for trade and business, then recite these 5 surahs. And this is a very interesting hadith, because there are 5 surahs and 6 bismillahs. This is a narration from Musnad Abu Ya'la al-Musili, narrated by Tafsir Madhari, Qadi Thana'ullah Panipati rahimahullah, and quoted as well by Mufti Shafi in Ma'arif al-Quran. They recite 5 surahs and 6 bismillahs. How does that work? Is that every surah before we recite it, recite bismillah, and at the end we recite bismillah for the 6th time. And which are the 5 surahs starting with قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا الْكَافِرُونَ. So Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا الْكَافِرُونَ till the end. Then Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, إِذَا جَاءَ نَصْرُ اللَّهِ till the end. The surah naturally, the whole surah. Then Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, skipping Lahab. Easy way to remember is that the very dangerous and frightening surah where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is cursing Abu Lahab till eternity, and his wife وَمْرَأَتُهُ, and those who will enter the fire, حَمَّالَةَ الْحَطَبِ. We skip that story of the azab of Allah and the wrath of Allah upon Abu Lahab, at this juncture at least. We skip that one, and Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ till the end. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ. And then Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ. And after completing Surah An-Nas, مِنَ الْجِنَّةِ وَالنَّاسِ. Then at the end say Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. For the journey. Because Bismillah is recited before every action. Bismillah before the journey, as the journey is beginning. And otherwise you might say Bismillah in a blank space. What is the Bismillah for? The last one. So that is for your journey. So 5 surahs, 6 Bismillah. Skipping Lahab from Kaafiroon till the end. And Jubair ibn Mut'im radiallahu anhu narrates that I began reciting this very simple surahs. It's a dua in the sense that we are doing it with the intention of dua. So even a woman who is in a state of ritual impurity and cannot recite Quran, if they're reciting the surahs with the intention of a dua, it will become a dua. I wasn't necessarily going to remember that fiqhi juzya, but it came to mind now that when I said this is a dua. These are surahs, so they are a dua now as well. So when a person is opening the Quran and making tilawah, or a person is reciting in salah, then that is tilawah of the Quran. When a person is reciting these very same surahs with no change, but with a niyat of a dua, for protection, reciting the 4 qul's and blowing upon one's hands and rubbing the hands over one's body. So this is a dua now. So the same surah, when it's recited with the intention of a dua, it is permissible for a male even, who is maybe in a state of ritual impurity, and the occurrence would be more for a woman, for the 5 to 7 days or whatever the days of her cycle per month, she may recite these du'as in the state of impurity, even when ghusl is wajib. Because she is not reciting it with the intention of tilawah, she is reciting it with the intention of dua. So these 5 surah, 6 Bismillah, when he started reciting this dua, what happened is that he says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put so much barakah that he used to be destitute, he had no means, and he was lagging behind, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala opened the doors of barakah, then opened the doors of fadl upon him, to the extent that he became far ahead of everyone else. If you want to go over the translation now, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. This is an order from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Qul, say, Ya ayyuha al-Kafiroon, O you disbelievers. Ya ayyuha al-Kafiroon, O you disbelievers. This word here, Qul, is an order of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to it's not switching on there. Okay. So is there? Yeah, okay. So قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا الْكَافِرُونَ. Say, O Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, O disbelievers. This is the order of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. I think there is a lag time. Yeah. So قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا الْكَافِرُونَ. Say, O Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, O disbelievers. You see? This is as the word. This is every letter here is a word, revealed word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why I'm re-mentioning this obvious fact is because another matter just came to mind, that there were many despots and dictators of the past, our time, recent past as well, but they used to continue to do dhulm and oppression upon the people. Many of them were overthrown in the recent past within the Muslim world, and particularly the Middle East. So whether it was Hafiz al-Assad or his son now, Bashar al-Assad, whatever crimes are being committed by him, or whether it was Mubarak or before him in Egypt. So they committed all types of dhulm and atrocities upon the people. but they never really interfered with the deen. They did not try to change the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What was unique unique in a very negative, bad sense concerning Muammar Gaddafi, Allah ta'ala knows best what iman he died, is that he also tried to alter the deen of the people. And this is one of the examples right here, is that he came up with this objection that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, قُلْ, say, Ya ayyuhal kafirun, O disbelievers. So this is an order from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And that order expired with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So what's the point of keep on saying قُلْ? This is now Gaddafi's thoughts and writings. So he said that this should not be part of the Quran. The first word, astaghfirullah. قُلْ is not part of the Quran, he said. Who said? This is naqlul kufri laysa bi kufrin. Narrating a statement of kufr is not kufr. Narrating a statement of kufr with the intention of rejecting that kufr is not kufr. Naql kufr, baniyat radd kufr, kufr nabashad, as they say in Farsi. That narrating a statement of kufr with the intention of refuting that kufr is not kufr. Otherwise, the Quran also says that Isa is son of Allah. The Quran also says that Uzair is son of Allah. But it's narrating that statement. وَقَالَتِ الْيَهُودُ عُزَيْرٌ ibn Allah. The Yahud, they said Uzair is the son of Allah. وَقَالَتِ النَّصَارَى, the Nasara said Masih ibn Allah. Isa is the son of Allah. Then Allah refused that. ذَلِكَ قَوْلُهُمْ بِأَفْوَاهِهِمْ. These are the false things they made up on their own side. سُبْحَانَهُ أَن يَكُونُ لَهُ وَلَدٌ. Pure is he from having any offspring. So likewise, we are narrating the statement of Gaddafi that he said, that why do we have this qul? Why do we have this qul? We do not need this qul. This is a big test for everybody to remain focused with. I don't know what's going on here. But inshallah, I'll try to stay focused too. You can stay focused. He said that you should just be Ya ayyuhal kafirun, O disbelievers. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was addressing Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And that address was to him during his life. And now after he has passed, has returned back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then is not applicable anymore. So our response to that is that every single word of the Quran, whether it was directly addressing Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam or not, it is the revealed word of Allah, and it is the Quran. We cannot reject it. قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا الْكَافِرُونَ. After that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what do we tell them? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, say to them, لَا أَعْبُدُ مَا تَعْبُدُونَ. I do not worship, I do not make ibadah of. لا أعبد ما تعبدون, of those false gods that you worship. ولا أنتم عابدون ما أعبد, nor do you worship the one Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that I worship. So in the interim, while they're working on this, is a good opportunity for us to go over the sabab al-nuzul. Sabab al-nuzul is the condition that led to the revelation of the surah. Walid ibn Mughira, right, the father of Khalid bin Walid radiallahu anhu. Unfortunately, the son was a great Sahabi and became the Sayfullah. He became the sword of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the father was one of the leaders of the mushrikeen. Walid ibn Mughira, father of Khalid bin Walid radiallahu anhu. Likewise, As ibn Wa'il. He again was a great leader of the Quraysh. His son became a Sahabi, Amr ibn al-As. And Umayyah ibn Khalaf. So Walid ibn Mughira, As ibn Wa'il, Umayyah ibn Khalaf, these leaders of the mushrikeen. Right? This is the condition, this is the story behind the revelation of this surah. They came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and they said that, Ya Rasulullah, you have to, or no, they would not say Ya Rasulullah, they were rejecting that. They never ever agreed to that term. In fact, as we see in the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he wrote there, this is the treaty between Muhammad Rasulullah and the Quraysh, between Muhammad the Messenger of Allah and the Quraysh. They said, erase that right there. If we agreed you are Rasulullah, then we wouldn't even have any problem with you coming to Makkah and performing Umrah. Write Muhammad bin Abdullah. So Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam told Ali radiallahu anhu, who was writing the treaty, that why don't you erase Rasulullah? He said, I cannot do that. How can I erase Rasulullah? He said, it's no problem. I am Muhammad Rasulullah, no doubt. Whether they believe it or not, whether they reject it or believe it, doesn't make a difference. I am Rasulullah, and I'm also Muhammad bin Abdullah. I'm also Muhammad son of Abdullah. So and then he showed him where it was, and he erased it himself. And then he said, write Uktub Muhammad bin Abdullah. In any case, they came to him and they said, Muhammad, you have to give up this invitation towards Tawheed, invitation towards the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is something that we cannot tolerate. And if you want wealth, we will all gather together, pool our resources and raise some funds for you and ensure that you will be the wealthiest and richest man in the history of Makkah. Number one, if you want. Number two, if you don't want that, then we'll ensure that you become, you get married to whichever girl you want, the most beautiful woman of Makkah, 1, 2, 3, however many you want, we will provide all those women for you. If you don't want that, then you want leadership, then we all agree that we will make you our united leader. We will all make you our leader and take bay'ah in your hands, pledge allegiance to you, as long as you give up this call to Tawheed. Whatever, anything of these options, whether you want wealth, whether you want women, whether you want to become our leader, only one condition is please stop speaking ill of our idols. So Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, of course, he refuted that, he rejected that. On various different occasions, he gave different answers. لَوْ وَضَعُ الشَّمْسَ فِي يَمِينِي وَالْقَمَرَ فِي شَمَالِي. He said, if you bring the sun from the sky, put it in my right hand, and bring the moon and put it in my left hand, I will not give up the effort of da'wah. Then he said, okay, if none of the above is agreeable to you, then one compromise is, how about this? 1 year, we will join you and worship one Allah and become muwahideen. All of the mushrikeen said, we all join the Tawheed and worship one Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Provided what? Next year, that you worship our idols. 1 year we worship your Allah, and the next year you worship our idols. In one narration it comes that all we ask from you at least is that you touch our idols once. Show some respect to our idols, and then we are ready to worship one Allah. Show some minor degree of reverence to our idols, and we are ready to believe in your Allah. So there were different proposals that came. Various different proposals that came, and the need of the hour was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had to reveal a very strong and decisive response, a definite, decisive response that once and for all, they will lose all hope of negotiations, that there is going to be no compromise whatsoever with regards to aqidah, with regards to belief. So this surah is a surah of disavowal from the actions of the pagans. It's a surah of bara'ah from the actions. Bara'ah meaning disavowal, that we have absolutely nothing to do with the actions of the mushrikeen. So say, oh disbelievers, Ya ayyuhal Kaafiroon. Allah Ta'ala is telling Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, now how do you respond to them? Say, oh Kaafiroon. Now this word Al-Kafiroon, one point since we are on this slide, is that Allah Subhanahu Wa Ta'ala قال Al-Kafiroon. He said, Al-Kafiroon, وَلَمْ يَقُلِ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا. He didn't say, Ya ayyuhal ladhina kafaru, or those who disbelieve. Whether we, I don't want to go into the really deep language of it, but we might have heard these words before, right? When Allah addresses the believers, what does He say? Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu. Doesn't He say that? Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu, or those who believe. So those who disbelieve, normally it's Ya ayyuhal ladhina kafaru, or those who disbelieve. Very rarely, or does Allah Ta'ala, majority of the time, most of the time, Allah always says, Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu, Ya ayyuhal ladhina kafaru. Allah Ta'ala doesn't say, Ya ayyuhal mu'minun. And normally He doesn't say, Ya ayyuhal Kaafiroon. But over here, Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, instead of using Al-ladhina amanu, those students who are here of the Arabic language will understand that that would be a jumla fi'liya, right? Al-ladhina kafaru, fi'l, verb. And Al-Kafiroon, this is an active participle. This is a ism fa'il. And it has a different meaning. Ya ayyuhal Kafiroon is different from Ya ayyuhal ladhina kafaru. Al-Kafiroon are those disbelievers who are bent on disbelief, and there is a sense of permanence to this meaning. Al-Kafiroon are those who have kufr now and will remain on kufr till the end. They will die on kufr. And this is, why is that significant? These are a specific group of kuffar Allah is addressing, that alim Allahu annahum la yu'minuna abadan. Allah in His infinite knowledge knew they will never believe. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in His infinite knowledge knew they will never accept Islam, never accept Iman. Why this is significant for us and what's the practical lesson for us is that a person who may be disbelieving today, you cannot go up to him and say that, as we will say, لا أعبد ما تعبدون ولا أنتم عابدون ما أعبد ولا أنا عابد ما عبدتم. I do not worship what you worship, you do not worship who I worship. You will never worship the God that I worship, and I will never worship the God you worship. There's a present tense and there's a future tense as well. So you will never worship the one Allah I'm worshiping, and I will never worship the false gods you're worshiping. You cannot say that, because there is always a possibility that that person might accept Islam. And over here, if some of the mushrikeen accepted Islam, these people did not, who brought the proposal. Walid bin Mughira, he died on kufr. And Umayyah bin Khalaf died on kufr and shirk. And As ibn Wa'il. They all were top leading mushrikeen. As ibn Wa'il is the one who brought some bones and scattered bones and threw it in front of Rasulullah SAW on him, and out of disrespect. And he said, مَنْ يُحِلْ عِظَامَ وَهِيَ رَمِيمٌ. Who is going to bring these dead bones back to life when they have completely disintegrated? This is the Surah Yasin. If you know Surah Yasin, right at the end of Surah Yasin. ضَرَبَ لَنَا مَثَلًا وَنَسِيَ خَلْقَهُ. He tries to portray an example for us, and he forgot about how he himself was created. قَالَ مَنْ يُحْيِي الْعِظَامَ وَهِيَ رَمِيمٌ. He says, who is going to bring these dead bones back to life? قُلْ يُحْيِيهَا الَّذِي أَنْشَأَهَا أَوَّلَ مَرَّةٍ. Say, the one who created you the first time, he will definitely bring it back to life. That was As ibn Wa'il. Walid bin Mughira died on shirk too. In fact, the people said that لولا نزل هذا القرآن على رجل من القريتين عظيم. Why isn't the Quran revealed on him? Because he's the biggest leader of the Qaryatain, of Makkah and Taif, the two cities. Why isn't the Quran revealed on Walid bin Mughira instead of Muhammad bin Abdullah? Because he was senior, big leader. So they died on kufr. Otherwise, there would be objection could have been that يلزم الكذب على الله تعالى, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is lying. That's impossible. How could Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say something factually incorrect? When Allah ta'ala is telling Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, tell them, you will never worship the one Allah I worship, and I will never worship the idols that you worship. So this Al-Kafiroon is referring to specific disbelievers who died on kufr. That's why it's not الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا. This is from Tafsir Baydawi. Moving forward, لا أعبد, right? I do not worship ما تعبدون. What all of you worship. So meaning I do not worship the false gods that you worship. And then likewise, وَلَا أَنْتُمْ عَابِدُونَ مَا أَعْبُدُ. And you all do not worship that which I worship. Meaning you do not worship when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And وَلَا أَنَا عَابِدٌ مَا عَبَدْتُمْ. Again, it's repetition. And I do not worship that which you all worship. Meaning I do not worship the idols you worship. We're going to come to this topic of the repetition. وَلَا أَنْتُمْ عَابِدُونَ مَا أَعْبُدُ. And all of you as well do not worship the one Allah that I worship. لَكُمْ دِينُكُمْ وَلِيَ دِينٌ. To you all is your religion, and to me is my religion. لَكُمْ, to you all, دِينُكُمْ, your religion. Wali, and to me, dini, my religion. So there are a number of things. This was the translation. قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا الْكَافِرُونَ. Say, O disbelievers, I don't worship the false gods you worship, you don't worship the Allah I worship. I don't worship the false gods you worship, you don't worship the Allah I worship. Twice. Then at the end is لَكُمْ دِينُكُمْ. To you all is your religion, and to me is my religion. لَكُمْ دِينُكُمْ. To you is your deen, wali dini, and to me is my deen. I did not necessarily read this in a book, but I observed traveling with mashayikh and scholars that when they pass in front of, one time I was traveling with some mashayikh and they passed in front of a temple, a mandir, Hindu temple, and they started reciting this ayah. قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا الْكَافِرُونَ لَا أَعْبُدُ مَا تَعْبُدُونَ وَلَا أَنْتُمْ عَابِدُونَ مَا أَعْبُدُ وَلَا أَنَا عَابِدٌ مَا أَعْبُدُ. And it was a very good refresher for my iman as well. I said, this is something beautiful. We learned from the suhbah of mashayikh that whenever we pass in front of any false house of worship of others than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then this is a beautiful ayah to repeat and remind ourselves. Make bara'ah from shirk and show our disapproval of what is occurring in that house of worship. So one question that might arise at this juncture is, what is the whole repetition about? Why is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala repeating it twice? And why is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying, and so much so that now alhamdulillah the surah is well known to, is very strongly, I'm sure, in our memory. But if you remember back when you were kids, it used to be so confusing. And when we teach the kids also, they get confused when they're learning it for the first time because of the repetition. So what's the whole repetition about? So there are a number of answers. The first answer is purely ta'keed, emphasis. That this repetition is by deliberate design from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we find examples of this throughout the Quran. عَمَّا يَتَسَاءَلُونَ عَنِ النَّبَإِ الْعَظِيمِ الَّذِي هُمْ فِيهِ مُخْتَلِفُونَ. What are they asking about? They're asking about the great prophecy, about the coming of the day of Qiyamah, concerning which they are in mukhtalifun, they are in different opinions, they are arguing, they are denying that the day of Qiyamah will come. What does Allah Ta'ala say after that? كَلَّا سَيَعْلَمُونَ ثُمَّ كَلَّا سَيَعْلَمُونَ. Nay, they shall surely know and see the reality. Nay, they will surely know and they will see the reality. So this is repetition for emphasis. And I presented this as another example here from a more perhaps well-known surah. إِنَّ مَعَ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا. Indeed, with hardship will be ease. إِنَّ مَعَ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا. This is from أَلَمْ نَشْرَحْ لَكَ صَدْرَكَ وَوَضَعْنَا عَنْكَ وِزْرَكَ الَّذِي أَنْقَضَ ظَهْرَكَ وَرَفَعْنَا لَكَ ذِكْرَكَ. If you translate the whole surah, we will get lost in that. But I just want to show this ayah. فَإِنَّ مَعَ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا. إِنَّ مَعَ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا. Indeed, along with hardship is ease. Indeed, along with hardship there is ease. So this is a consolation. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving consolation. Look, you are suffering hardship, there will be ease. Along with hardship, there will be ease. So this repetition is for ta'keed. There, as I said, كَلَّا سَيَعْلَمُونَ ثُمَّ كَلَّا سَيَعْلَمُونَ. And also there was repeated proposals, various different proposals that were given by the mushrikeen. So each one of them was, the answer was given. And the language of this surah is very grand, very strong. And the feeling a person will get is of strength and of conviction, of absolutely no compromise when it comes to our aqidah. قُلْ, say, يَا أَيُّهَا الْكَافِرُونَ. Over some places Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is trying to bring them close and inviting them. The Jews and the Christians, they're not addressed in the Quran as يَا أَيُّهَا الضَّالُّونَ. Oh, those who gone astray. يَا قَتَلَةَ الْأَنْبِيَاء. Oh, the killers of the prophets. They're not addressed like that. Even though they were those who assassinated the Anbiya. How are we taught to address them? Ya Ahl al-Kitab. Oh, the people of the book. So elevating them, granting them honor and respect, trying to bring them closer. This is how you give da'wah. So this surah here is very different. This is in the early Meccan period, speaking to the die-hard kuffar who are, as we already went over, Al-Kafiroon, not al-ladhina kafaru, Al-Kafiroon, who are going to die on kufr. And they've been addressed that, oh kafirs, O disbelievers who are bent on disbelief, pillars of disbelief, top of the opposition of Rasulullah SAW. Let it be known that under no circumstance will we budge on our aqidah, on our belief of tawheed. So that's why there's repetition. And the final conclusion at the end is, Lakum deenakum, you have your way of life, your deen, waliya deeni, and I have my way of life. There's no middle path. And at the end, if Allah wills, we'll come to practical lessons in our life. Sometimes we have to take stands within our own families, within various situations, within our communities, when it comes to a matter of aqidah and belief. There is room for compromise, and there is room for musalaha, and to come together on something where you give up some of your rights and you forego some of what you want. But there are certain issues where you have to take a stand. And when it comes to aqidah and belief, you have to take a stand. So this is an opportunity where it is befitting that emphasis is placed through repetition. So that is a very simple concept, the first answer to the question. Another answer is tense-wise. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioning first, La a'budu ma ta'budun. Presently now, I am not worshipping the false gods you worship. And you are not worshipping, present tense, the false God, the one Allah that I worship. Right now, it's not going to change. And the second time when it comes again is future. in the future as well. Right now, I'm worshipping Allah, you are not worshipping my Allah, and I'm not worshipping your gods. And as far as the future is concerned, I will never, وَلَا أَنَا عَابِدٌ مَا عَبَدتُّمْ, I will never worship the false gods you're worshipping. وَلَا أَنْتُمْ عَابِدُونَ مَا أَعْبُدُ, and you will never worship the one Allah I'm worshipping. Someone will say, how can you say they will never worship Allah in the future? We already covered that. This is referring to those kuffar, Al-Kafiroon, who are going to die on kufr. So that is the purpose of repetition. It's not repetition, it's not, there is no ayah in the Quran which is repeated for no purpose. Rather, the first time it is the present tense meant, and it's really difficult for me now to explain it, all of the language behind it, but take it that I can give the reference that in Tafsir Baydawi, and the details are mentioned from the lugha point of view, how that goes about. But I think this basic level concept is everyone can appreciate, that the first time it comes is present. So la a'budu ma ta'budun means I currently, according to the second translation now, I currently am not worshipping the false gods you worship. This would be the translation of this ayah. And you currently right now are not worshipping the one Allah that I worship. Okay? Present tense. Ayah 2 and 3, present tense. Now ayah 4 and 5, future. وَلَا أَنَا عَابِدٌ مَا عَبَدتُّمْ, and I will not ever worship the false gods you are worshipping. Future again. And you will never worship the one Allah that I am worshipping. Conclusion, you have your deen and I have my deen. This is the second answer. And there are a lot of different answers, different scholars of tafsir have come up with to answer this question. What is the question? Why is there repetition? Is it too much? Okay, you're following so far. I know it's late in the working day. So the question, again, I repeat, because repetition is helpful. The whole question is about repetition. Why is this repeated? The first answer was simple, for emphasis, for ta'keed. And I give an example. Inna ma'al usri yusra, indeed along with difficulty is ease. Inna ma'al usri yusra, along with difficulty is ease. Just for emphasis. And why emphasis is needed? Because there are repeated proposals from the mushrikeen, because this is a point of strength, this is a position of strength and steadfastness in the surah that is being imparted to Rasulullah ﷺ and to us throughout all ages, that you have to be firm and you have to repeatedly announce it from the rooftops, as they say in English. Make this proclamation once and for all. Second answer is, first time is the present tense. I am not worshipping your false gods, you are not worshipping my one Allah. Second time when it comes around, it's future tense. That I will never worship your false gods and you will never worship my Allah. And the question I get about that is that how do you know? These are die-hard kuffar, mushrikun, who will die on shirk, as Allah Ta'ala knew in His infinite knowledge. Now, I'm not sure if even the third one, if I should even explain it or not, because it's a little bit slightly more complicated. But there is a beautiful practical lesson as well in the third meaning. That's why I chose it. The third answer. The third answer has to do with the word ma. This ma has multiple meanings in the Arabic language. As our students from the Alim program are also here, and actually you will be tested on this, as I said. So that's why, for their benefit and whatever else we can grasp from it, I will say this third meaning very quickly. But this is a very beautiful meaning that the scholars of tafsir have mentioned. See this word ma, in the Arabic language, there's ma nafiya, ma mawsula, ma masdariya. There's very different types of ma. Sometimes ma comes for negation, sometimes ma comes for different meanings. But the two meanings here is that the question is about ayah number 2 and 3, right? 2 and 3, and then 4 and 5. So 2 and 3 is being repeated, and then there's 4 and 5. So they will say that for ayah 2 and 3, ma is one particular meaning, and 4 and 5, ma is a second meaning. There's two different types of ma here, and the two different types of ma will give two different types of meaning. Therefore, there is no repetition. The key is, we are trying to say there's no futile, wasteful repetition. There's a specific meaning for the first of ayah 3 and 4, it's specific meaning for 2 and 3 and 4 and 5. 2 and 3 is a specific meaning, 4 and 5 is specific meaning. There's no repetition without any purpose. And this happens throughout the Quran. Sometimes the formal expression might be similar, sometimes the formal expression might be even identical, but the deeper semantic meaning are different. So one meaning of the word ma is that it's a ma, as I said, those Arabic students can pay attention, is mawsula. Mawsula is a relative, like alladhi. So it would mean how we have been translating it now. So ayah 2 and 3 would mean, ayah 2 would mean, ma is translated as what? La a'budu, I am not worshipping. Ma ta'budun, what you are worshipping. So what are you referring to? The object of worship. That I am not worshipping the same object of worship that you are worshipping. And wala antum abiduna, you are not worshipping. Ma is translated as what? The object of my worship. So what are you trying to say here is that the object of worship, the maqsood of the ibadah is different. How is it different? In simple words, is Allah versus idols. I am worshipping Allah. You are worshipping idols. The object of worship is different. Ma is mawsula here. Ma is a relative noun. Ma is translated as what? If ma is translated as what, then ma a'budu is, and ma ta'budun is referring to the object of worship. So my object of worship is Allah, your object of worship is idols. So Allah is versus idols. And moving forward, now in 4 and 5, ma is a different ma here. Ma over here would mean, this is a ma masdariya. Ma masdariya means it turns the verb after it into the infinitive, meaning it turns the verb after it into the root noun. So ma abattum, for those of us who are not familiar with the Arabic language, you can take it from me that when ma is a masdariya, what is the meaning of ma abattum now? Ma abattum doesn't mean the object of worship anymore. It means the way of your worship, the mode of worship. I am not worshipping the way you worship. The way you worship. And wala antum abiduna ma a'bud. And you are not worshipping the way I worship. Ma a'budu means the way I worship. So how is this different? So you are first ayah 2 and 3 was speaking about the object of worship, Allah versus idols. And 4 and 5 is now speaking about modes of worship. I am worshipping in the revealed way by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You are worshipping in your self-fabricated ways. The way we do the ibadah of Allah. How do we do the ibadah of Allah? The way revealed by Allah. How do they do the ibadah of Allah? Self-fabricated. And this is what is in this kalima. La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. What is La ilaha illallah? This is showing that object of worship is, our object of worship is Allah. Their object of worship are ilah, all false other gods. La ilaha illallah, our object of worship is Allah, their object of worship are false gods. Muhammadur Rasulullah, the way we worship Allah. How do we worship Allah? The way revealed upon Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The way they worship Allah is the way created by themselves, self-fabricated ways. So ayah 2 and 3 is showing the object of worship is different. Our object of worship is Allah, your object of worship are the idols. And 4 and 5 is showing the method of worship. Our method of worship is revealed by Allah as upon Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, whereas your method of worship is self-fabricated. So if that made sense, fine. If it did not, if it was a little difficult, I know I did not have time to really explain it in detail as I would have liked to. If you had more time or in a better place in the morning. But one thing we can all take from it is that there is no repetition in the Quran without purpose. There are multiple purposes in why the ayah has been revealed. Twice. If it's thrice, then why it's thrice. If it's 10 times, why it's 10 times. If فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ is repeated a dozen times, then there's a purpose every single time is repeated. It's not without purpose. That much benefit we can take from this discussion, InShaAllah. And also we can remember the fact, La ilaha illallah, that our object of worship is Allah. And Muhammad Rasulullah, our mode of worship, how do you worship Allah, is the way shown by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This word here, lakum dinukum waliya deen. You have your deen and we have our deen. Okay, this will be easier now. It's not too hard. This word deen has multiple meanings. Right? One meaning of the word deen is simple, your religion. You have your religion and I have my religion. So that means that we have a deen we are following, and they also have a deen. I spoke about this in Jummah recently, a few Jummahs ago. So those who were present in Jummah, they might be aware of this. So look at this. So there are various deens, and the one deen that is acceptable to Allah is the deen of Islam. Look at this ayah. Inna deen indallahil Islam. Indeed, the deen, the religion, the true religion in the sight of Allah is Islam. The rest of the ayah, we don't have to go into it right now. This is Surah 3, ayah 19. The only point I wanted to really highlight was the first part. Inna deen indallah al-Islam. So they have a deen, we have a deen. What is deen? Deen is general, it's am, any way of life. So the Yahudiya is a deen, Nasraniya, Christianity is a deen, Judaism is a deen, Buddhism is a deen, Confucianism is a deen, Hinduism is a deen. These are all deens, because deen means any way of life. From all of these deen, inna deen indallah al-Islam. The only deen that is acceptable to Allah is the deen of Islam. So from all the different batil deen, adyan, plural, the one deen which is acceptable to Allah is submitting to the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the deen of Islam, as was revealed upon all the prophets. So Nuh alayhi salam was a Muslim, Ibrahim alayhi salam, ma kana Ibrahim Yahudiyan wala Nasraniyan, walakin kana Hanifan Muslima. Ibrahim alayhi salam was a Muslim, and Musa alayhi salam was a Muslim, Isa alayhi salam was a Muslim, Muhammad Rasulullah was a Muslim, we are all Muslims. So the way of submitting to Allah throughout the times, the one deen that was the acceptable deen in the eyes of Allah is the deen of Islam. But the other, okay, here as well. وَمَنْ يَبْتَغِي غَيْرَ الْإِسْلَامِ دِينًا. Whoever adopts or desires other than Islam, any other deen, فَلَنْ يُقْبَلَ مِنْهُ. It will never be accepted from him. And they will be in the akhirah min al-khasirin, from amongst the losers. So this tells us that the other ways of life are also termed as deen. Over here, look, al-yawma, today, akmaltu lakum deenakum. I have perfected your deen, your religion. Wa atmamtu alaykum ni'mati. I have completed my favor upon you. This was revealed when? On the 9th of Dhul Hijjah, on the day of Arafah, Friday, on the 10th year of Hijrah, right before Rasulullah left this world. Wa raditu lakumul islama deenan. I have approved for you Islam as your deen. So our deen is Islam. Lakum deenukum. You have your deen, wali deen, we have our deen. What is the name of our deen? Islam. So what is the prevalent deen today? The prevalent deen or way of life is materialism, worship of material. And they are mere rituals that separate people. Some marriage rites, some funeral rites, and when a child is born, a few different rites. Somebody goes, may Allah protect us. On Saturday, somebody goes to worship on Friday, somebody goes to worship on Sunday. But the maqsad of hayat, the purpose of life, the ambitions, the hopes, the desires, the way of thinking, the way of living, is the lines are being blurred. Everyone has the same deen, the deen of worship of dunya, worship of abdul dinari or abdul dirham. So this is something we have to be aware of. So this is very simple. Everyone understood, lakum deenukum waliya deen. And the other ayah that I wanted, this came Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. Actually, it's not Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. The next ayah, Maliki Yawmid Deen. So Maliki Yawmid Deen is what is the meaning of Maliki Yawmid Deen? The master of the day of judgment. Remember, we already did this in Surah Fatiha. Maliki Yawmid Deen, master of the day of religion or master of the day of judgment? Master of the day of judgment. So this is the second meaning of this ayah. Lakum deenukum waliya deen means now, for you is your judgment by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wali, and for me is my judgment by Allah. Dusra matlab. Second, another meaning. Maliki yawmid deen. The master of the day of judgment was the slide you were supposed to see. But it's okay. This is ayah well known. Everyone knows this ayah, with no exception. Everyone knows Maliki yawmid deen. Master of the day of judgment. So lakum deenukum, you have your judgment. What does that mean? So you sow, what you sow, that is what you will reap, as is the common statement. As you sow, so shall you reap. As you sow, so shall you reap. Whatever seeds you are planting today, that is the reward or punishment you will receive accordingly. Lakum deenukum, for you is your judgment by Allah. Wali dini, and for me is my Judgment by Allah. And this meaning is corroborated by other ayats. Surah 10:41. وَإِن كَذَّبُوكَ. And if they reject you, they belie you. So what should he say? فَقُل. Say, لِي عَمَلِي وَلَكُمْ عَمَلُكُمْ. That for me is my amal, my work I'm doing, and you have your amal. أَنْتُمْ بَرِيءُونَ مِمَّا أَعْمَلُ. You are free from what I'm doing. وَأَنَا بَرِيءٌ مِمَّا تَعْمَلُ. I'm free from what you are doing. Same meaning. You will have your judgment by Allah, and I will have my judgment by Allah. Again, لَنَا أَعْمَالُنَا وَلَكُمْ أَعْمَالُكُمْ. For us are our actions, for you are your actions. In any case, this is the Tafsir al-Quran bil-Quran to prove this meaning. There are other scholars who they say this is what it means, and then they bring evidence from the Quran to prove it. But for us, we understood two things, right? The deen has two meanings. It means you have your religion, materialism, shirk, whatever the case may be. We have our religion. Our religion is Islam, and your religion is whatever false religion it may be. And the other meaning is you have your judgment by Allah, and we will have our judgment by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, finish that one. Next point is that this whole surah and the meaning that we got from it, one opinion is that it's mansukh, it's abrogated. Why is it abrogated? Those who are proponents of this view, they have two proofs. They say this surah is saying absolutely no compromise with mushrikeen, and do not have any compromise with them, don't sign any treaty with them. Right? You have your way, we have our way. We're not going to talk, we're not going to come on the table, no meetings, no compromise, no treaties. That's what the ayah is saying. Whereas we see Allah revealed this ayah here. This is the abrogator, nasikh. What did Allah say? وَإِن جَنَحُوا لِلسَّلْمِ. If they are inclining to peace, فَجْنَحْ لَهَا. Then you also incline to peace. Surah Tawbah. If they incline to peace, وَإِن جَنَحُوا لِلسَّلْمِ فَجْنَحْ لَهَا. You also incline to peace. وَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ. And rely upon Allah. إِنَّهُ هُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ. Indeed, He is the all-hearing, all-knowing. Remember I told you that every time a word comes, it has a specific meaning. You will say, how many times Allah Ta'ala told us He's Sami'ul Alim? Why is it repeated here? Every time when it's Sami'ul Alim, ala kulli shayin qadir, khabir, khabirun bima ta'malun. Whenever the words come at the end of the ayah, the sifat of Allah, every time it has a specific meaning based on the ayah. This is a good case study. Because if they incline towards peace, you also incline towards peace. Okay? Meaning the mushrikeen, the opposition, if they want to have a peace treaty, you can also sign the peace treaty. وَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ. Rely on Allah. What does that mean? You're afraid. They might betray you. They might be lying. They might be doing something underhanded. So when you're signing the treaty, you're kind of afraid. What if this is also farce? It's a deception. So rely on Allah. وَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ. إِنَّهُ. Why should you rely on Allah? Who is Sami'? He's hearing their plans. Sami'un. He is hearing, meaning He's hearing their plans. What they're plotting behind the back. Alimun, if they're speaking it, He's hearing it. And if they didn't even speak their plans, their plotting, if they're just thinking about it in their hearts, alim, then He has complete knowledge of their evil plotting in their hearts. When they're signing the treaty, they're lying. It's all false. They have some plan in their heart. Maybe the head of the state, he didn't even divulge his secret to the negotiating team. And the diplomats also, the bureaucrats who are in the treaty, they don't even know that this is all false, that we're actually building up our troops and we're going to do a surprise attack. They don't even know. If it's just in the heart of the king or the general and the one who's in charge of the army, alim, Allah knows what's in his heart. If he made a mashwara about it behind doors and he spoke about it, then Sami', Allah is hearing. Tawakkal Allah, rely on Allah. So that's towards the end of the ayah. But the main thing here is, وَإِن جَنَحُوا لِلسَّلْمِ. If they incline towards peace, you can also make peace with them. So they say this ayah is abrogator. Besides the fact of the ayah is the practice of Rasulullah. What did he do? When he came to Medina, he did musalaha with the Yahud. He signed peace treaties with the Jews. He told the Jews of Medina, if Medina is attacked, I will defend you. If the Yahud, Banu Qaynuqa, Qurayza and Nadir, the three Jewish tribes, if you are attacked, we will defend you. And if we are attacked, you must defend us. So he signed a treaty with the Yahud. Likewise, even Hudaybiyah, he signed a treaty with the Mushrikeen of Makkah. So the practice of Rasulullah, as well as this ayah, these are the abrogators. This is the first reason why this whole surah is mansukh, according to these people. It's abrogated. And the second reason is, this whole lakum deenukum waliyadeen, you have your way and we have our way. This is in the beginning when they were weak, when they were powerless in Makkah. But afterwards, when they were granted an Islamic state, an independent state, then they were entrusted with the mission of da'wah. You can't just say you have your way, live and let live. No, 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 that's not anymore. Rather, the second command, the abrogator, the cancelling, the nasikh ayah, is all the ayat pertaining to da'wah and even armed struggle sometimes, if the need is there. Armed struggle, and you know what we're talking about, that is also there. So that's why this ayah is mansukh. These are the two evidences for the group who believe so. But the majority of scholars, and in fact the correct opinion, is that this surah is not mansukh, it's not cancelled. But we have to understand things properly. Why is it not mansukh? First of all, if the question, they had two reasons, right? One was about the whole treaty business. When it comes to the treaty, in this surah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying no compromise. Whereas Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here is saying you may compromise. There is no contradiction. The prohibition of the compromise in Surah Kaafiroon is intact till today. And the permissibility of compromise in this surah is intact till today. Both are applicable. But there are different types of compromises. This is what we have to understand. If there is a compromise that is, they're saying a proposal that change your aqidah, or you believe in shirk as well, if you will believe in tawheed as well, mix it up. Then no compromise then, no compromise now. Ayah is applicable. Surah Al-Kafiroon, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says you cannot budge from your position, that ayah is still applicable today. And this type of compromise, where Allah is speaking about Surah Tawbah, this type of treaty, this is a non-aggression pact, this is a pact of mutual alliance, we will help one another in our worldly needs. This was permissible then, this is permissible now. This has nothing to do with belief. So our deen stands for tolerance, kindness, politeness, peace, more than any other deen. So all ethical principles still are upheld and maintained till today with respect to human rights. So we can enter into alliances. Muslim countries can enter into alliances with non-Muslim countries, non-Muslim states, and it is permissible. This ayah guarantees the permissibility as well as the personal example set forth by Rasulullah SAW. And then someone said, what about Surah Kafirun? No compromise. Yes, that is still applied till today. No compromise in divine law. No compromise in the basic tenets of our faith. So this is what we have to understand. Unfortunately, what happens is that in personal matters, what pertaining to our ego, in our own lives, in our own families, with our wives, with our husbands, with our families, with our cousins, in-laws, whatever the case may be, our personal preferences, we take a stand and we say, no way, I'm not going to budge on this. And we show kibr and arrogance and we have our egos. We don't want to swallow our ego. This is what I said, this is what I decided, no way am I going to change. Whereas Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that even with mushrikeens, with non-Muslims, you can compromise in these matters. And when it comes to the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then we say that, khandan ki baatein kya kare, our family is asking this. When it comes to our weddings, when it comes to different functions, then we forgo all our principles and we just go with the crowd. We say, no, we have to compromise. It's a matter of our family, it's a matter of this, a matter of the society, a matter of community. So we have got it wrong. We have reversed it. When it comes to your personal likes and dislikes, when it comes to your personal tastes, I want to make it practical for us, so it's not just a theoretical discussion. Then the example is this practice of Rasulullah SAW, as well as this ayah. Yes, you can compromise. You can forego your own likes and dislikes for worldly needs. But when it comes to the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then we have the example of lakum deenukum waliyadeen. No way, there is no compromise whatsoever. And the general principle for all peace treaties with non-Muslims, Rasulullah ﷺ said, all peace treaties are good, illa sulhan ahalla halalan or harramaha halalan. Except for such a sulah, that is not permissible, in which ahalla haraman, which makes a haram halal, which makes a haram halal, or which makes a halal haram, which changes the order of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in short. So when Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam signed treaties with the Yahud, did he change the order of Allah? No. He just said this was a worldly alliance. So that's why that was permissible. So this was some of the basic points. I believe that we covered all of these ayats and pertaining to the surah. So the gist of the surah for all of us is, and the take-home message is that for us to give da'wah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is our primary responsibility, da'wah ilallah, as ummati of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we have to be very clear. We have to have absolutely no reservation in the haqqaniyah, in the truth of our deen. that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us the deen of Islam. There is absolutely no doubt therein. La rayba fihi, in the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we have to let it be known to others when we are inviting them, that these are our core principles. No matter what the situation will be, we will never compromise. No matter how difficult the condition might be, we will continue to hold fast onto our deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we will declare to one and all, La a'budu ma ta'budun. I am not worshipping now, I will never worship in the future. My object of worship, my mode of worship, whatever, all the tafsirs, all apply. My object of worship is different from yours. My mode of worship, different from yours. Presently, I worship other than you. And in the future also, I will always worship other than you. There is no compromise when it comes to our deen. This is the gist of this surah. And otherwise, there are other surahs and other opportunities where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about compromise, where compromise is possible. So we have to have this firmness of our belief. We have to be very strong in articulating this and allowing others to know. And we cannot become, unfortunately, like what is happening nowadays. And personally, I've even observed this whole interfaith. Interfaith is with the intention of giving da'wah. It's totally, not only permissible, is a very weak term, but it's an obligation. It's a faridah that we do interfaith with the intention of da'wah, with the purpose of da'wah. And to dispel the misconceptions others have about Islam, to enlighten them about Islam, to go into the churches, into the synagogues and other places and invite them and say La ilaha illallah. If the bylaws of that particular interfaith session prohibit open invitation to your faith, which in many cases happen, then at least to declare this is what we believe. Every statement you have to qualify. I've been there, done that, so I'm saying that you have to say, as Muslims we believe that it is an affront on God to say He has a son. But you have to say it. As a Muslim, this is what we believe. You can't say that this is the haqq, this is it. You have to qualify your statement with, as a Muslim I believe such. Fine, that is still permissible. But going beyond that, for this, we are living in such a time of where others are, or where our Muslims, some of us are unfortunately getting loose in our faith and going against the instruction of Allah in this surah. Okay, let us all stand in circle, hold hands and call on to the Great One. Moment of silence where we will all put our head down, worshipping together. Who are we worshipping? Who is the object of worship? The Great One, the one. Okay, so that person will say, my niyyah is Allah, and his niyyah is, the next guy I'm holding his hand he's worshipping, he's a Hindu, next one is a Jew, everyone worshipping their own God. But beyond that, actually saying, look, the rabbis and the priests, when they came to our masjid, they joined in the prayer. They joined in the qiyam, ruku, sajda, they joined the salatul jama'ah. So how, it's going to be unfair, it's not just for us, it's going to be injustice on our part that when we go to the church, we don't join in their actual prayer. If you go into the Catholic Church, as a matter of aqidah, they worship Maryam alayhi salam, right? This is one of the divergences of the Protestants from the Catholics. And so they're worshipping Maryam alayhi salam, or they're worshipping, they're not only saying the Father, the Son, they're worshipping the Son, so-called Son. And you are joining that worship for the sake of solidarity. Right? So that is now absolutely not permissible. La a'budu ma ta'budun. So this is a wake-up call for us to remind us that we cannot participate in such type of interfaith activity where we are now engaging in shirk. And how many times I've seen this, that the Jew comes and he says that for salvation, we believe that you have to believe such and such and follow the Old Testament, etc. Then the Christian comes and says, for salvation, you must believe in Jesus, that He died on the cross for your sins, the whole aqidah of redemption. You have to believe that God loved His creation so much that He sent His only begotten Son into the world, and He died on the cross to take upon the sins of all mankind. So if you believe Jesus is your Savior, then you can attain salvation. If you don't believe that, then literally it's eternal damnation to hell, meaning all Muslims will enter hellfire. He has no problem in saying that. But when the Muslim's turn comes, he says that we are all paths lead to one God. The Jews, the Christians, and the Muslims all are one and the same. Whoever believes in the day of God, in the day of judgment, and does righteous actions, they'll be rewarded by God. Literally, he doesn't have the guts, for lack of a better term, or to say the reality that no. We believe. Why don't you qualify it? If you're feeling embarrassed to say, this is what it is, then, qualification, what I mean when I say qualify? So add the condition. As a Muslim, Muslims believe thus. And say the right aqidah, that a person for salvation, for najah, must believe in the entirety of the kalima of tawheed. Not only la ilaha illallah, but must also believe in Muhammadur Rasulullah. Now, we believe in the Old Testament, the New Testament, and of course the Last Testament. And it is eternal. It is necessary for salvation to believe in Muhammad Rasulullah. So that type of spirit and that strength is the take-home lesson, inshallah, that we should take from this surah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant me that strength of iman, grant all of us and our children, and most importantly our progeny, the strength of iman to remain steadfast. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillah.
When you're reciting the surah, who